Power 98.7, progressively elevating the conversation. Now, we're talking.
13 minutes before 8 on the Power Business. Now let's go to Fix My Biz, where we're talking about this, that we often hear that ambition is the key to business success. But what happens when ambition overshoots reality? Tonight on Fix My Biz, we're asking a tough but important question. If someone's business plan is failing, were they too ambitious or just not realistic enough? To help us understand a little bit more about this, we have Brian Mhlanga, who's a business leadership coach. Very good evening, Brian, and thanks for joining us on the Power Business this evening.
Happy Monday, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's good to be wished Happy Monday. I haven't heard it in that context in a while. It's usually Happy Friday, but I'll take it for Monday as well.
Yeah, trying to be a little bit positive, eh?
Absolutely. You have to be positive. How can an entrepreneur, Brian, tell the difference between a bold vision and overreaching when they're putting their business plan together?
Those are quite distinct, right? You mentioned bold and an overreaching vision, right? So let's take it back. A bold vision is informed by ambition. It's really grounded in the understanding of a market that is quite informed by strategy, a little bit of some research there, and you are really crunching the numbers. Whereas when you're working with something that is overreaching, it ignores things such as the figures, some of the constraints, and it even ignores some realities, right? And so a vision is something that stretches, right? And an overreach is something that literally breaks.
So is there a framework then that you recommend for entrepreneurs to set ambitious goals while they still remain grounded in reality?
Yeah, there are quite a few actually. But for the purpose of today's conversation, I'll bring to your attention two. There is the one that we call setting SMART goals, right? When we talk about SMART methodology, we're looking at making goals specific, measurable, they should be achievable, they should be relevant, and they're obviously bound by timelines, right? And so it's something that you should be able to pin down to the minute detail. Then there's also something that we call in business coaching, what we call in backcasting. This is where you look at the end game, the end goal, and you work backwards just to identify what needs to be achieved at each particular stage of the business.
So it sounds like the addition of timelines or deadlines is really important in order to ensure that those goals have some shape.
It is. It's important because that is what it's the roadmap, right? And it gives us milestones. And how do we measure those milestones? It's about us asking ourselves, what will success look like, and how will we know when we get there? And that's why the SMART methodology works and is ideal in this case.
If you'd like to contribute or talk about this issue around ambition and around ensuring that a business plan is realistic, you can join us on 0861 987 000, also taking voice notes on 083 303 7093, and posts on X at PowerFM 987 is the handle. Brian, what are some red flags that a business plan could be driven more by hopes and dreams than by strategy?
There are quite a few there, right? And for the purpose of today's conversation, I'll share three. Sometimes you get certain entities and certain businesses, and I see this a lot in startups, right? They have no clear go-to-market plan, right? It's as if they just build, there's no direction really, right? That's the first one. Then secondly, you do not get revenue projections with no bottom-up modeling, so that can become a little bit of a challenge. And when there's heavy reliance on future funding, that becomes. I mean, we are all you building this enterprise with money that you don't have and money that has been promised. What if it doesn't come? Right? And then what I've also noticed of late in certain spaces, I recently was at a workshop or at a conference, and I found the overuse of certain jargon such as disruption. People are using disruption, rapid, vital, and they're using all the nice lingos, right? Already for me, it tells you that in as much as there might be substance to some of these plans, but you realize that it's more lip service, really.
Okay, so jargon is a major red flag for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting that.
When it's not backed up by figures, proper figures. Yeah.
How do you advise then entrepreneurs to balance both their long-term dream, because it's very important to have a dream, with the practical steps in the planning process?
There isn't any formula, but what works sometimes is that for entrepreneurs to have what we call the long-term vision, right? You need to keep sight of that. You can't lose sight of that, because that becomes the North Star. And when you lose sight of the North Star, you tend to get lost. So it's very important to keep sight of it, to not get distracted, because what happens with entrepreneurs in the process of chasing the North Star, there are few distractions that come in, and the entrepreneur does not have the discipline to either stick to the path that they have chosen, that they have taken, and then they become distracted and they follow what is not part of the plan. So it's very important to keep the long-term vision. It's visible, and it should be something that is energizing at an emotional level to some extent. I often also talk about how it's important to have what I call these 12-week sprints, where you can set goals that are clear, that you can actually measure in 90 days to actually say, this is what I want, right? Or this is what I'm working towards. Because then it becomes part of that SMART methodology, where you're able to measure them, where you're able to see within this time, from this quarter I've been able to do this, or I've not been able to do this because of A, B, C, and D, and therefore tackle what has been coming in the way.
So what kind of mindset shifts then are needed when someone realizes that their business plan is failing, not because of efforts, but just because their goals were misaligned with reality? They realize that they, for example, aren't able to access that funding that you spoke of.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, actually running an enterprise is an issue of the mind, right? It requires a growth mindset, right? You can't walk into an enterprise or build a venture with a fixed mindset. It means you need to be able to realize at some point things are not going to go the way that you wanted them to go. There will be setback, right? So instead of seeing things as dead ends, one should be able to look at them as maybe mazes that are leading you into something else, right? So now that, for example, I'm working with somebody on a certain enterprise, and the enterprise started quite well in its growth stage, but now it's getting to its maturity and it's requiring a different strategy. And instead of thinking that the business is failing, the question that I'm asking this individual is, what is the data telling you now, right? Because the data could be telling you that it's now time to pivot, or it's now time to bring in a new strategy if you want to survive in the market.
Pivot being such an important word. I remember when it really sprang to prominence during COVID, everyone was talking about pivoting. So let's speak a little bit more about that. We've spoken quite a bit about internal issues and misalignment. What about external pressures? For example, the market or industry or a pandemic, although that's not a frequent event. How does that impact a business plan, even the best laid business plan? And how should entrepreneurs remain flexible around those events?
Yeah, so there are a couple of forces that businesses and even small enterprises are contending, right? So, for example, businesses contend political factors within the market, right? So whatever is happening within our political sphere has an impact with what is going to be happening at an economic level. You've seen what's been happening in the global north, what's happening in America has had a high impact into what's even happening here in South Africa, right? So you can't work and think that those political dimensions and factors are not going to have an influence on how your business is going to operate. That's number one. So, for instance, actually right now what's happening in South Africa, there are businesses and enterprises that are employing people that are not South Africans, right? And that in itself is something that could impact on any business, right? Let's say you've got a business that is running on people that has half its workforce who are not naturalized South Africans. It's already a thing. It's going to tell you that with the movements that are happening in South Africa, your business could be at risk. So if I was in the hospitality industry and that is the kind of workforce that I had, I would be very worried and to start thinking, what do I need to do in order to mitigate that? So political factors are actually a big thing. But connected to that are also what's happening socially in our country, right? Right now we've got elements such as unemployment, there's there's issues around crime, there's issues around even people's health and lifestyles and all that kind of thing. That has an impact also on the type of workforce you have. That has an impact on who's coming into the work, how are they showing in the workplace. You cannot ignore also those factors, including what's happening within the economy. That's something that one has to be fully much awakened and alive to.
And so how should people then keep their business plans flexible when planning for those events? It would have been impossible, say, 2 years ago to even think that Donald Trump would have been reelected.
I often say when we build strategies are living documents. They are not set in stone, which means at some point we need to be very honest to say that we will have to go back to the drawing board and actually say things have changed. So, for example, I come from an era where we used to craft strategies for 5 years. Right now, I'm in a space where now 5 years is too long because a lot of things happen in 5 years. So now people talk about at most 3-year strategies or 24-month strategies. So it's about realizing that these documents are living documents and we should be open to continuously be changing and taking into account what's happening externally and also what are the business needs and what's going on within our sectors.
Thanks very much, Brian. And that's Brian Mhlanga, business leadership coach, taking us through some of the pivots that entrepreneurs may have to make in their business plan.
Power Business was proudly brought to you by MTN. Today, we make moves.